again on this wonderful Thursday. Greetings from Vienna. First and foremost, please drop me a quick comment or a quick like if you can hear and see me, because we do have a new streaming setup, and it might look the same to you, but it looks very different to me here. And we have, of course, things, right? We have things that should be working and they're not working, right? So let's see how we can manage that. So far so good. Just a second here as well. Give me a second to set this up. Sorry for the delay, but we'll jump into the things in a second. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, thanks for the patience. The stream should be working here, of course, on 1001. Yes, thanks, Gordon. I'm trying my best here. The new streaming setup doesn't work as well as expected. But I think now we should also be live on Facebook. All right, so that's good. And I'll just quickly also post a link here to the YouTube stream for the people that are on Facebook. You can see if you're on Facebook right now and you think the camera quality is a bit poopy, right? I'll give you the link to the YouTube channel so you can watch. So, but we have some starting problems, obviously, today. Problems getting started. And that's really the topic of today. It's how do you actually get started with programming? How do you become a programmer? What is the first thing you should do? And how should you continue from there? Right. So also, if you're still here and after my short intermezzo, let me know, right? What your current situation is. Are you a complete beginner? That's fine, right? Let me know. Are you somebody that has recently started and doesn't know what to do? Are you somebody that is involved already in some way or form for a longer time, and you're not certain if you're on the right track? So let me know that in the chat right now, and then we'll dive right into that. Also, yeah, I mean, let's start from the beginning. Everything needs a solid starting point, right? Um, so you can actually move forward and learn efficiently. Because every good thing needs a solid foundation or starting point. Okay, so if you let me know where you are currently, we can dive a little deeper into that. That means, do you already learn a specific language? Do you use any courses? Right? Are you enrolled in a university degree? Something like that. Let me know that in the chat while I try to figure out the YouTube link. And I also can see here Gordon and Delora. Thanks for joining. And today we'll discuss how the starting point, like how you can find a starting point that makes like sense for your specific programming goals, right? And that make it easy for you to continue learning. So the idea is that after this class, you will know exactly what kind of project you should be doing and starting out with, right? And how to approach that project with confidence. And the goal here is that you have an idea of what to do, so you can basically get something started right after this live class. So again, this is for you if you are a complete beginner, you have no idea, you're just looking for an entry point, right? This is also for you if you've been learning for yourself for some time, but you feel like you don't know what you're working towards, right? Very important note here. At this point, right? At this point, ladies and gentlemen, you need to be somebody that takes action and starts doing, right? There is there's no way around it. Because if you're just a girl or a dude, right, and you watch a live stream, and that's all nice and fun, right? But you then afterwards you lean back and say, hey, oh, this weird Austrian man. I like the Austrian man, but I'm not doing anything, right? I'm not doing anything, then nothing's gonna happen, right? You will not get results. But if you do the right things, and you might even make a well-educated decision to have me help you with that. So don't waste any more time. Many of your people have been doing it for a long time, right? And I don't want you to waste time on the wrong implementation. And everybody knows, right? Everybody knows there is an endless amount of information on the internet on how to get started, how to become a programmer, right? And if you have been in the weeds, so to say, you figure out that many things are conflicting, right? One dude says the one thing, the other dude says the other thing, and you don't even know how to figure out, okay, what is actually up to date, what is actually still relevant, what is useful information, what can simply be ignored, right? So if you want to be ahead of the curve, get pen and paper ready, because we're gonna dive in deep today, and I'm gonna tell you how to find a starting point, and after that, how to apply a working and proven system that we've been using with our clients for years now, right? And they don't have that issue. Okay. So if that sounds good to you, then write something in the comments. Write let's go in the comments, push the algorithm up a little bit so more people can see the live stream. And then I would say it's story time. Because back in the day, I'm getting old now, right? When I was taking my first steps with programming, the world was different. Okay, we get it. It was the late 90s. The internet did exist, and it was a happy place for many people. But there was no Google, there was no YouTube, there definitely no live streams, anything like that. And back then, I didn't really set out to become a programmer. Right? I was just 14 years old. I was a curious kid, and I had an infinite amount of time compared to now. And back then, I had no idea how to structure anything. Right? That is something I had to learn much later in my first actual software engineering job. Right? And I would have known back then what I know now. The difference that it would have made in my career is insane. It's literally insane, because there's so many small things. And I look down here at Facebook and I look here at YouTube, because now I have two cameras going. They make such a difference that if you approach those details in the right way, the process is much quicker and much more enjoyable, right? And now 20 years of me doing this, right, of programming, and over a decade of me doing this professionally, Now I know how it goes, right? It's relatively easy to talk about this, but I'm here to make this journey less painful for you, so you can progress way faster. Because maybe you have already started a few times. Maybe you started in this one language and then you found out, doesn't go so well, doesn't go so well, and you get frustrated and you put it on break for some time. Then after a few months, you find your motivation again, and you say, okay, maybe I'll try something new. I'll try Python now, right? Whatever. And that's just not a great way to go about things, because you know what happens? The cycle repeats, and it repeats, and it repeats. And another problem that is very common if you're an absolute beginner is you need to be aware that basically everybody, random people off the street, can put up a Udemy course or whatever, right? And there's really no guarantee that the person putting it up actually knows what they're talking about, right? And even if, right, even if they know what they're talking about, like in the technical aspect of it, most of them just haven't worked with beginners, right? They very often present in a way that's very hard to follow for somebody that has never done it before, right? So be aware of that. So very often the way you're learning, right, or the way information is presented is the problem, and it's not necessarily you as a person. So let me start with a few things, right? What you definitely don't need to do is know many programming languages, right? Very often people kind of feel like, oh shit, I see a job application, right, or whatever. You see, oh, I want to do the job, and they list a lot of technologies and frameworks and what have you, and people get the idea that they need to learn all of those to be like even be considered. This is something many people get wrong. Many people try to learn more and more and more to feel ready to start their own project, but realistically nobody can memorize all the things. And what is really key here is that you really just need a tiny bit of knowledge, right? And then already you can, and you should, get started on some kind of project, right? So I'm going to show you how to do this. And do yourself a favor, if we're here, there's a bunch of people here, even with the shit quality webcam that we're on now. I'm gonna explain you some real world example that some of our clients have done, right? So what you can do now is please tell me in the chat what you think your biggest issue is when it comes to actually getting started learning programming properly. So I can adjust a little bit what I have prepared for your situation, because literally everybody's situation is different, right? We all have different challenges, and that plays into what you should be doing. Okay, so it's an interactive kind of thing. It's an actual live thing, and I have a very long message here, so I'll just read that. Right? I'm a QA engineer. I've been looking at JavaScript this past 2-3 months. I've been trying to at least 30 minutes, 60 minutes a week, depending on free time. Is this a good pace to learn it, or would you recommend putting more time in the week? And then the message goes on. Shall I carry on the course and focus on the project tasks they give? What key principles, learning method would you say would help you to language more? I have too little coding experience, 2 years, 80-20 split between manual and automation. Apologies for the essay. The essay is okay. All right, so I'll answer that right off the bat. The 1 hour a day is a good pace in general, but we'll dive a little bit deeper into that, and then I'll give the minute details for you, Sandeep, while I'm talking about this. Because the first thing, and I just mentioned it, pretty please only learn one programming language, right? Only one. Only one. Okay. Let me tell you why. Because you can solve any problem with any programming language, right? So you need to be aware of this. So you don't need to learn multiple, and especially in the beginning. If you hop from language to language, you'll be just starting over and starting over and starting over again, right? You'll only be scratching the surface of each one of those, and you really, at the end, you have no idea what you're doing. Okay, what you really need is a good and deep understanding, right? So really understanding what you're doing. Yeah? And I compare it very often to something like when you learn a language that you speak. Yeah, you can dedicate yourself to learning Spanish, and you do this for 2 hours or 2 years, right? And after that, you become pretty good at communicating in Spanish, which is fine, right? And with that skill, you'll probably have an easy time understanding Italian because they share the same roots, right? This makes sense, right? And then when you go to Italy, yeah, you pretty quickly learn how to communicate there as well. That's a fine idea. Everybody understands that. In contrast to that, you can do the other thing. Yeah? You spend the same time and the same effort learning how to order breakfast and 5 beers in 20 different languages. Right? You learn this in Spanish, in German, in Russian, in Mandarin, whatever. And what can you do then? That's a fun party trick. Congratulations. Congratulations. But you have no idea what you're doing. Right? And it's exactly the same thing with programming languages. Right? You need to learn one and you need to learn it well because only then you understand the underlying structures. And very often as a beginner, there's just no need to learn another one for a long time, right? And if you take this seriously, that makes everything much easier for you, because you can only focus on one language, and actually get good at it. And that really brings me to the second point, and this is also a very important point here. At this point, it's okay, cool. Mr. Florian said I should learn one language. Which programming language, right? Which programming language should you learn? If you have any ideas, you can also put them in the chat, right? For those people that are really, really absolute beginners, you can raise a hand if you're an absolute beginner, okay? HTML and CSS are not programming languages, period, right? They describe how something looks, right? And you can learn that, that's fine. But that doesn't teach you anything about logic. That doesn't teach you anything about control flow. That doesn't teach you anything about problem solving, right? And if you are very good at HTML, CSS, you can create your static web pages, and that's not very useful, right? And with platforms like Squarespace and all that, you can just build a web page. You don't really need to touch any HTML ever, right? So it's also not a very useful and not very high in demand skill, right? What you also need to consider that many things need code, and it's not just web pages. Okay, I need to make this clear. People forget about this, right? And those niches are usually more lucrative and also more interesting. And you just need to look around you a little bit. Everything runs code. Your wristwatch, your microwave, your phone, your fitness tracker, your TV, maybe your lights. Yeah, everything runs code. So open up your mind a little bit. Not everything's a web application. Okay, all right. And think about those things that might be interesting to you. But I got a little off track here. So I say, okay, please, one programming language. Happy days. But which one? Which one? Please tell me. Right? I'll tell you. Doesn't really matter. If you have any ideas, you can also put it in the chat. Right? But I'll tell you some recommendations. And the recommendation, this is key because you're gonna stick with that programming languages probably for a long time. So you need to pick a language that is versatile. Right? You don't want to be locked into a specific field early on, right? If you now say, okay, you do JavaScript, you'll just do web applications. You're not gonna program things for cars or traffic lights, right? You want a multi-purpose language, okay? And the specialization part, right? Where I say, hey, I want to program traffic lights or I want to program web applications. That is something that happens much later. Now, at first, you must understand how to go from a real world problem to a software solution. And that skill will in turn help you become a good programmer. So you need to pick a language that is like multi-platform and versatile, and also very important, it should have been around for some time. It's not something where it's just a current hype. Right? Cool new languages come out on a monthly basis. Cool. And they also die on a monthly basis. And you want a programming language to continue being around for some time. You want in a few years that thing still be there, because otherwise you're gonna have a hard time, right? So you could have Java, right? Python, C#, something like that. Maybe Rust. Okay, those are all good, solid languages. My opinion, if you want my personal opinion, C# is the most comfortable to work with, right? You can build your desktop applications, you can build your mobile applications, you can build your web applications with Unity, you can build cool shooter games, right? And it is also relatively easy to pick up, okay? So what is the next step here then? Right, so you decided on one programming language. If you're a cool dude or dudette, you decided on C#. Yeah, what do you do now? Do you spend countless hours watching YouTube, watching me live stream? Do you buy 5 million books? Please don't, okay? No, what you do is you start with your own project before you know anything. Start with a teeny tiny little teeny tiny toy project, right? And not, again, the nuances are important here, okay? Not some silly little project that you found online, like, oh, build a calculator, build a tic-tac-toe game, bullshit. You need to think about your own life. This brings us back, right, to all the things that need code. What are your hobbies? What do you do in your spare time? What do your kids do in their spare time, right? So if you have some ideas here, you can also send me a quick message here. But you should be thinking, could a computer program help me with that, right? And think a little bit outside the box. Do you play an instrument? Do you watch sports? Do you have a special needs kid? Do you create YouTube content, for example, right? A client of ours has created, and this is basically his portfolio application, has created an application that helps him build thumbnails for his YouTube content that's automatically generated to be as clickbaity as possible so he gets more clicks, right? Do you have any hobbies? Yeah, maybe you want to analyze your bowling scores over time, right? If your pet is on a diet, build a food tracker for your cat. Do you spend too much time watching random streams, right? Build a program that prevents you from that yells at you if you spend too much time online, right? Do you have any tedious day-to-day tasks that could be automated, right? That's your project. Make this application your goal. And this is key because your motivation, right, to build and finish that will just be 100 times higher, right? If you just build a project to build a project, you're not gonna like it, gonna hate it, all right. But if you're building your project and the end result, like the piece of software, is something you would actually want to have and use, then your motivation is 100 times bigger, right? So that's really the third step here. Very important. Keep it in your brain, please. You need to delete all ideas of to-do lists, portfolio pages, e-commerce websites, calculators, tic-tac-toes. You need to delete it from your brain. You need to start thinking about your interests and your day-to-day tasks, right? And of course, right, if you have trouble coming up with something, you can message me, right, or leave a comment here, even if you're watching this on replay, right? I'll help you along if you draw an absolute blank. Also, in our Facebook group, like we had a recording of a live stream where we go through, I think, 90 project ideas if you can't come up with something yourself, right? So you need to start on that project. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, right? How do you start on something before I know how to do things? Okay, I know it sounds weird, but it works, right? You need to start on a project before you try to amass a huge amount of knowledge, right? Because it doesn't help you. It sounds scary, but it works. Okay, you go into this only looking up stuff that you don't know how to do at that specific moment you want to do it, right? It will make your life so much easier because you don't have to try and memorize everything, right? And learning will be a side effect of building. Get this in your head, right? Nobody goes into a hardware store, right, to every machine and everything they have and picks out all the instruction manuals, then goes back home and for 4 months reads all the instruction manuals. Because you'll forget everything anyways, right? You only look up stuff that you need at that specific moment. And then you learn as you build, right? Let me know if that makes sense or if you're super confused. right? So that's really a core ingredient of the whole operation working. Let's summarize those three things, because if you do that, right, your confusion and your workload decreases by, I don't know, a bunch. You only learn one programming language and you stick to that for longer than you feel comfortable with. Okay, much longer. You don't look at HTML, CSS. Just forget about it as a beginner. You can pick that up later if you really need that and if you really need to build a web application. Okay, might not need it. It's fine. Right? And number three, you find your first project by looking at your personal situation. You identify somewhere in your life or extended like sphere of influence, you identify a problem and your project is to build software to help with that problem. Okay, because you're doing this, all of this, to become good at programming, right? This might be for your next career move. That's maybe to progress in your current job. That's maybe just for personal growth. This is fine. In any case, if you take those three things seriously, right, that sets you up to actually learn how to solve real world problems, right? And that's what we programmers do, right? And that's really the closest you can get to getting real world experience without actually working as a software engineer at a company, right? So if those three steps make sense to you, right, and feel like, okay, it makes sense, right? I want to do this. And you want a little deeper dive on that, right? So that you know that you always 100% know you're on the right track and you want some senior engineers to talk with you about that. Yeah, you can write get started in the chat or send me a DM, right? We'll have a little conversation one-on-one and look at your current situation and see how you specifically should get started without wasting any more time, right? All you have to do is write get started in the comments or send me a DM. We'll make it up. We'll make it happen, right? And I'm doing this because now literally I've been doing the mentoring thing for 5 years now. Okay. So many people I've seen that haven't worked with us, right? The other ones. But I've seen so many people, they have all the prerequisites, right? They want to learn programming, they like it, everything's happy. For some reason they quit. And 100% of the time the reason is not because programming is hard, right? But because there's no clear guidance on what to do and when to do it. And it's just extremely hard to figure out what are the relevant skills if you're just by yourself, right? And so many people have quit for all the wrong reasons. So do yourself a favor. If you want some help, always reach out to me. I'm here to help. So that's all I have to tell you. We have a little time for a little Q&A session if you want. I don't know how many people can now actually see the stream because everything's a little fucky, right? So if you have a question, anything program related that goes, right, drop it in the chat now. I'll answer it gladly for you. And in the meanwhile, I'll try to convey to you how really, really, really important those things are. Right? One language, long time. The language is not the problem usually, right? Maybe if it's JavaScript, JavaScript might be the problem, okay? But the language is not the problem. You need to understand it deeply and it just takes time and you need to stick with this one thing, right? Very important. And also the only looking stuff up that you need at the moment will decrease your workload enormously, right? And the first thing if you don't know how to do something, you look it up. Okay, maybe the second time you need to do something, you look it up again, right? But the third or fifth time, you know how to do it. You don't look it up anymore. You don't need to actively remember it, right? That's how learning actually works. And then suddenly you don't have to remember anything because the things you do very often that you need very often, you know how to do. There's a bunch of things you don't know how to do and will probably never know how to do, but it doesn't matter because it moves you still closer to your goal. And I've been programming for 20 plus years and I also learn new stuff along the way. That's fine, right? You will never know all the things and you cannot pre-learn. You cannot try to learn the necessary things without actually having the context on actually needing it. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. No questions are here. That means every questions have been answered. If you have any questions after this live stream, feel free to message me. Feel free to leave a comment. Thank everybody for being here. Until next time, have a nice evening or noon.